Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Mark Janish, your host, and this is the From the Bench podcast for December 20th, 2019. Going to go over some picks for week 15 of the NFL season. Getting close to the playoff determiners as far as that goes. The Texans and the Buccaneers. The first game I'll be looking at, the Buccaneers have won 4 in a row and 5 of 6, but they're pretty beat up. The AFC South leading Houston Texans need to keep winning. And the desperation on the part of the Texans is a good motivator at this point. Houston is 9-5, Tampa Bay 7-7, playing Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. These first 3 games, there's a triple header on the NFL Network, so you want to check your local cable or satellite listings for where that's available in your area. I have the Texans by 3. The over-under is 50.5. Go ahead and take the Texans and the over. In this case, I'm not sure that Jameis Winston can continue his stat-filling performances. I think last week he had about 450 yards of total offense. The Bills and the Patriots, this is going to be interesting. Fight for the AFC East. The Patriots favored by 6. The over-under is 37. I would check the weather on this. I actually would go ahead and take the over, and I will go ahead and pick the Bills in an upset. I'm not sure that Tom Brady has anybody to throw to. The defense has been very stellar as far as on the Patriots side of the ball, but you do need some receivers. Tom Brady has no help this year. The absence of Rob Gronkowski is really telling in this area. Josh Allen's playing well, and the Bills should be able to run the ball with Singletary on the Patriots. Buffalo is tough on defense, and there's no indication that the Patriots can do much more than the Steelers did last game. The 49ers and the Rams, game 2 of the triple header on the NFL Network. The 49ers favored by 6.5. The over-under is 44.5. I go ahead and take the over in this game. I do actually predict the Rams in an upset. The 49ers are pretty beat up, so this one won't be easy for them. And the Rams are reeling after coming up empty against Dallas, 44-21. This game has a feel of a back-and-forth slugfest, which I do believe it will be. And the Rams are trying to play spoiler in this case. I'd like to see San Francisco end up in their current slot as the number 5 seed, thus indicating a wild card weekend game rather than the 1 or 2 slot, which is occupied by the Seattle Seahawks, the number 1 slot. The Ravens and the Browns. Ravens by 10. The over-under is 49.5. The Ravens need to keep winning to lock up the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's bad news for the Browns, who are in that familiar place of being on the outside looking in. Have some very serious reservations regarding the employment future of Freddie Kitchens as coach of the Browns with all the talent that they have. Ravens by 10. The over-under is 49.5. Go ahead and take the Ravens and the over in this game. The Dolphins and the hapless Bengals, who will probably draft Joe Burrow, Heisman Trophy winner, newly minted out of LSU. The Bengals favored by 1. The over-under is 46.5. The Dolphins are still playing hard, and Ryan Fitzpatrick has joined Baltimore's Lamar Jackson and Arizona's Kyler Murray as one of 3 quarterbacks to lead their team in rushing and passing this year. Go ahead and take the Dolphins in this game, and I would take the over at 46.5. The Steelers and the Jets. Steelers favored by 3. The over-under is 37. The Jets should be able to shut down that run, so Connor may have a difficulty with that. The Jets have 3 fewer wins than the Steelers, but this is a game where the Gang Green could step up big. Steelers favored by 3. The over-under's 37. I go ahead and take the over and the Steelers in this game because it is important regarding playoff positioning. The Falcons and the Jaguars. Falcons favored by 7. The over-under is 46.5. Gardner Minshew will be making things interesting when he scrambles. The Jaguars are just okay. The Falcons have gotten healthier, and Julio Jones is going to give Jacksonville its share of problems in that secondary. So go ahead and take the Falcons and the over at 46.5. The Colts and the Panthers. The Colts by 6.5. The over-under is 46.5. So Ron Rivera isn't the problem anymore since he's been dispatched by the Panthers at this point. So we'll see what happens, but I would say take the Colts and the 6.5 and the over-under at 46.5. The Saints and the Titans. This should be a great game. Saints by 2.5. The over-under is 49. The Saints are really good. They're my Super Bowl pick, despite the fact that I support the Seahawks and the Rams in this case. Tennessee needs to be able to run the ball. Not sure that's going to happen. Ryan Tannehill has had a great year, but he needs to keep pace with Drew Brees. That means that, in this case, I think the Titans need to play some ball control. That means running the ball, so we'll see how that goes. Right now, the Saints favored by 2.5. The over-under is 49.5. Go ahead and take the over and the Saints in this area. The Giants and the Redskins. Redskins favored by 2. The over-under is 41. The Giants are starting to get healthy again, and Saquon Barkley is starting to look like himself. Dwayne Haskins has shown some great promise. Still, the Giants may or may not have enough to get this done. So go ahead and take the Redskins and the over at 41. The Broncos and the Lions. The Broncos favored by 7. The over-under is 37.5. Drew Lock has looked very good in a couple of starts for the Broncos. The Broncos can run the ball with Phillip Lindsay in the backfield, and Denver's defense doesn't necessarily wow people, but it does do the job. The Lions don't scare anybody with this offense, especially with the absence of Matthew Stafford. The next game we're going to pick has the Raiders facing the Chargers. The Raiders gave up a lead to Jacksonville in the last game in the black hole. And we don't know. I don't know if the disappointment's going to carry out. Carry over. Derwin James should be back for the Chargers. Plus, the talent gap here favors the Chargers. Even though the Chargers are 5-9, I'm not sure about Anthony Lynn's employment status, nor am I sure of the status of one Phillip Rivers, who I believe either should retire or he may be traded to a new team. I think the Chargers do need to move into another direction. That's a 1 p.m. Pacific time kickoff. Game of the day. The Eagles and the Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 1.5. Over-under is 45.5. This is basically a pick'em game. I actually think the Eagles will win this game. Dallas runs it well. The Cowboys showed up against the Rams, and they can be dangerous when they decide to run the ball with Ezekiel Elliott. I go ahead and I take the Eagles in the upset. I do believe the Eagles will beat the Cowboys. Now, they need a couple more things to continue to happen to make the playoffs, but this is essentially a fight for the NFC East and the number 4 playoff seed. The Seahawks and the Cardinals. This might be a trap game for the Seahawks. I do believe the Seahawks will win, however, to keep their hold on the number 1 seed. The Seahawks favored by 10. I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. Maybe 7 more than 10 would be more appropriate. The over-under is 51. Cardinals have won some games. Kyler Murray has a lot of upside, but I do believe the Seahawks take this game, so take the Seahawks and the over. The Chiefs and the Bears. In the Sunday night game, Chiefs defense has played very well the last 4 or 5 weeks. Chicago's on the road. Kansas City's going to score big on everyone. And Chicago will have a hard time keeping up with Mitchell Trubisky at the helm at the quarterback spot for the Bears. Go ahead and take the Chiefs and the over. Over-under is 44.5. Chiefs favored by 6. Once again, take the Chiefs and the over in this game. The Vikings and the Packers. Vikings by 5.5. The over-under is 46. The Vikings are a better team. Aaron Rodgers is great, but the Packers have lots of other vulnerabilities they need to deal with. Hopefully the defense will show up. Green Bay hasn't won in Minnesota since 2015, so never in the new stadium where they will be playing. So that wraps up my picks for the Week 15. We're going to go ahead, we're going to take a look at the playoff seedings here in just a moment. I want to remind you, you're listening to the From the Bench podcast. And you can hear this podcast and any other podcast on Stitcher, Libsyn, or Spotify. So you're welcome to go to accessmediaglobal.com. Still working on some website changes and improvements. Have more on that as the new year approaches. Haven't been as successful as I'd like to be. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to the homepage, click on the debit or credit card icons. Your gifts are greatly appreciated. All I can say is this is a labor of love, but airtime costs money, and I need your help. If you can at all support the podcast, you enjoy the podcast, you enjoy the weekly picks. If you would like to go ahead and give, you certainly may do so. So what I want to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the playoff picture out of the National Football League. It'll be just a moment. And I want to remind you that you're listening to the From the Bench podcast. And this podcast is 10 years old today. Actually, December 20th, 2010. I think I started with a one-page blog 10 years ago. And I'm happy you're still with us. Those of you that have been listening for a while, we've gone through a couple upgrades, looking to do some more things going into the new year as far as podcast improvements. So stay tuned in that. I also am hoping to bring some guests on to discuss the playoff picture in the NFL as the games approach. I think the first games would be approximately, I want to say January 4 or 5, but we'll get to that here in just a moment. Here we go with the NFL playoff picture as it stands now. Obviously, the playoffs don't start today, but if they did, we would have the Ravens at the number 1 seed and the Patriots the number 2 seed out of the AFC. Then you would have the Chiefs with the number 3 seed, the Steelers with the number 6 seed, and the high-flying Bills at 10-4 who are going to face New England, currently projected the 5 seed. And then, of course, the Texans the Texans would be in the 4 seed. And as a reminder, your 1 and 2 seeds, which would be Patriots and Ravens, they would get a bye out of the first week of the playoffs. The wild card standings would be, the wild card games would be the Chiefs and the Steelers, and then the Bills and the Texans as it stands now. Right now, the Seattle Seahawks, 11-3, leading the NFC West by virtue of their win against San Francisco, who they will face in the last week of the season, December 29th. They're the 1 seed. The Packers are the number 2 seed, but they got some business to take care of against the Vikings. Right now, the Vikings are the 6th seed. The Saints are at number 3. And the 49ers are at number 5. And the Cowboys currently leading the NFC East at number 4. So once again, your wild card games January 4 and 5. Coming out of the NFC would be the number 3 Saints versus the Vikings. And then, of course, the 4 and the 5 seed. Currently, the Cowboys hold that 4 seed playing San Francisco. That game would be at AT&T Stadium by virtue of seeding at that particular point. So, in the hunt, okay, teams that are still mathematically alive would be the AFC Titans, 8-6. The Browns are still mathematically alive. And then, of course, the 6-8 Raiders, who I just mentioned, they're the number 9 seed right now. In the NFC, the only team still alive, obviously, the only team to qualify out of the NFC East is going to be the Eagles or the Cowboys. The Rams right now have an outside shot if things fall right. I'm not sure that the defending NFC champion Rams are going to be anywhere near the playoffs, but that's what the playoffs would be as it stands. I do appreciate you listening to the podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, and Libsyn. I also want to wish everyone, the Christian community around the world, a very Merry Christmas, commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ and celebrating that event as far as the nativity around the world. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Also to the Jewish community, Happy Hanukkah, Festival of Lights, commemorating the deliverance of the Jewish community a long, long time ago in Old Testament biblical days. So we want to tell the Jewish community Happy Hanukkah. I appreciate you listening. Once again, you can go to accessmediaglobal.com for any more information. What I'd like to do is come back next week, perhaps on a Thursday, perhaps the day after Christmas, after the NBA Christmas games, including the Clippers and the Lakers. We're going to talk extensively. I think my next podcast that I do on Thursday, December 26th, I'll be planning to do a exclusive Lakers and Clippers podcast, so you won't want to miss that. Once again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and for all who have supported and are a part of AccessMediaGlobal.com and the From the Bench podcast, I'm Mark Janis, your host, saying thanks for listening and have a great, great holiday season.